From the moment you look at Tuesday's slate, you can feel how tight and gritty these cup games are about to get. Only 2 matchups sit on the board, but both carry that familiar energy you get when teams know there's no wiggle room. Every rotation matters, every possession feels heavier, and every small edge on the player prop market becomes even more valuable. And for a slate this small, the Heat vs. Magic showdown becomes the type of matchup where every detail, injuries, minutes, trends, roles, tells a story you cannot overlook. So let's break it down. Miami enters the night as 1.5 point favorites, a number that reflects both their current health and the trouble Orlando is dealing with. Miami's side of the injury report is unusually clean for this point in the season. Tyler Herro, Haywood Highsmith, and be at full strength. That alone already creates a certain structure for how their rotations and offensive touch distribution will look, which matters a ton for props. Meanwhile, Orlando just took a massive hit with Franz Wagner ruled out for 2 to 4 weeks. It stings even more because they had just gotten Paolo Banchero back, and were finally working him back into game speed, chemistry, and rhythm. Losing Wagner, one of their most important all-around players, means Orlando is now trying to stabilize everything on the fly, and this matchup happens to land right in the middle of that transition. Looking at props, the first under that jumps off the board is Tyler Herro's assists. And it's not just a small edge, the numbers paint a very straightforward picture. He had one big assist night earlier in the season, but on this roster, with Norman Powell now taking on some handling and scoring responsibility, the opportunities simply aren't consistent enough. Herro has cleared his assist line in only one game with what would be considered real distribution value. Otherwise, he's floating around roughly 4 potential assists per game. That means he would need to convert basically every opportunity he gets, which is not a realistic expectation based on his current role. Last season he was handling more point guard responsibilities for long stretches, especially early when Davion Mitchell was coming off the bench. But once Mitchell entered the starting lineup later in the season, Herro's job shifted. He wasn't passing as much because he didn't have to. Fast forward to this year, he's clearly focused on scoring, being aggressive, and looking for his own shot first. This under becomes even sharper when you consider the matchup. The Magic allow the 3rd fewest assists in the entire league, and since Herro is playing on the road in a tough environment, the assist floor goes down even further. For people who have been asking for strong unders, this is one that checks every box: role, matchup, trend, and probability. Now shifting to one of the most unusual situations on the slate, Anthony Black's rebounds. Sometimes numbers behave normally. Sometimes numbers tell a story. And sometimes you stare at a stat line and can't figure out why it's happening. This is one of those cases. His minutes have not changed. Paolo Banchero returning should theoretically reduce his rebounding opportunities, and Franz Wagner getting hurt doesn't actually create more realistic rebound chances for him. On paper, nothing about usage, rotation, or flow suggests he should suddenly be pulling down big rebound totals. Yet here we are. If this happened for 1 or 2 games, it could be brushed off as noise. But 4 straight games, that's where a statistical bump starts turning into the early stages of a trend. And once you get to 5 or 6 games, that becomes a legitimate trend with predictive value. Right now, Anthony Black is sitting in that early trend territory. Magic have been shooting the 3 extremely poorly, around the low 30% range, and that leads to long rebounds. Long rebounds favor guards who understand where the ball is going to fall, and Black appears to be positioning himself exactly where those opportunities develop. Over his last 4 games, while averaging roughly 30 minutes, he's pulling in nearly 9 rebounds a game on 13 rebound chances. That conversion rate is extremely high, especially for a guard. And against this Heat team, nothing about his hustle or roll suggests he'll suddenly stop crashing the glass. If anything, this is a matchup that pushes him to stay aggressive. He had 8 rebounds versus Miami earlier this season, and Miami allows the second most rebounds to opponents. If someone believes in this black rebound trend, laddering up is absolutely in play. That's how strong the numbers look right now. On the other side, Bam Adebayo's rebound line at 9.5 also stands out, not just because it's sitting at plus money, but because the matchup history supports it strongly. Earlier this season against Orlando, he finished with 12 rebounds. More recently, he pulled down 15 on 16 and 20 rebound chances. Those are elite opportunity numbers, and in games like this, where the intensity increases and rotations tighten, he tends to get more minutes. That likely pushes Kevin Love into a reduced role, which only increases Bam's rebounding potential. Add in the fact that 6 of the last 7 centers facing the Magic have gone over their rebound prop, and this becomes another extremely logical spot. Another Heat player worth mentioning is 𝐏𝐈𝐂𝐊𝐒 Jr., but this one is from the opposite direction. His under on PRA stands out because the line looks misleading if you don't dig deeper. Season-wide, he has crushed these numbers multiple times. But when you filter his games to only the ones where Norman Powell and Tyler Herro are both active, his production drops significantly. In those situations he has gone under in both games, playing only 17 and 21 minutes, averaging just 15 PRA. That's the reality of role compression. When you have Herro, Powell, and Andrew Wiggins all playing, 𝐏𝐈𝐂𝐊𝐒 simply gets fewer touches, fewer minutes, and fewer opportunities. Even his points line, originally set around 9.5 before getting bumped to 10.5 due to a 70–80% season hit rate, becomes misleading because the split with Powell and Herro active completely changes the picture. He hasn't gone over in either of those situations. In a game of this magnitude, you want your top creators on the court as often as possible, which means 𝐏𝐈𝐂𝐊𝐒 will be battling for limited scraps within a crowded rotation. It's a smart under, and definitely a sneaky one because surface-level stats don't reveal the whole story. As for the side, the lean goes to Miami. One team is getting healthier. One team is trying to adjust after losing another core player. Orlando needs to figure out how to survive without Franz Wagner while reintegrating Paolo Banchero, and that type of transition rarely stabilizes quickly. Miami has continuity, health, and experience on their side, and in a game like this, those factors often matter more than anything else. And tonight, we shift our focus to a matchup that brings its own unique blend of volatility, injuries, and betting value as the New York Knicks get set to face the Toronto Raptors. This isn't the flashiest game on the slate, but anyone who has followed this season closely knows that the Knicks and the Raptors always seem to bring a certain edge when they square off. These are the kinds of games where one player stepping into a different rotation role, one injury update, or one rebounding matchup can swing a prop bet or even tilt the game's flow entirely. And when we look at where both sides stand right now, with injuries, rotation changes, and trends that matter, there is real value to break down. The Knicks come into this one sitting as 4.5-point favorites, and that number reflects the fact that they are getting healthier at the right time. One player they will not have available is Miles McBride, also known as Deuce McBride, who has been ruled out. Meanwhile, Karl-Anthony Towns is listed as questionable, but all signs point toward him playing because he has been practicing. That makes a huge difference for how the Knicks approach their rotations and their frontcourt minutes. On the Raptors' side, they're still without RJ Barrett, which is a key absence considering his scoring and creation ability. They will also be missing a couple of role players. Sheed is questionable, and Battle is doubtful. That leaves Toronto operating with a thinner rotation, and that matters when you compare matchups across the board. But even with all that laid out, one of the most dependable angles in Knicks games lately has come from a very specific prop that has been cashing consistently. And that brings us right into a play that has been one of the most reliable first quarter prop spots on the board since the books adjusted it downward. Mitchell Robinson's first quarter rebound line, which used to open at 2 or 2.5 when he was starting, has become one of the most profitable pivots on the board now that he's coming off the bench. Over his last 6 games in this new bench role, he has only missed this prop once. He only needs a few minutes to make noise, and he has consistently played around 4 to 5 minutes in the opening quarter since shifting to the second unit. That's not a lot of minutes, but Robinson is such a pure rebounding force that he doesn't need extended run to get active on the glass. And right now, you can still find this prop at plus money, which makes it even more attractive for anyone who has access to it. And if you need proof of just how volatile he can be in a short burst, look at what he did against these same Raptors back on November 30th. In that first quarter alone, he grabbed 5 rebounds, in just 4 minutes. When a player can create that kind of rebounding production in that little time, you absolutely have to consider the opportunity every time books keep this at a playable number. And the best part is that even if you're someone who hates sweating out first quarter props, or someone who prefers not to lock into such a small window of time, Robinson still offers value in his full game rebounding line as well. His season-long rebounds prop has a 73% hit rate, which is enormous consistency for a player who doesn't play starter-level minutes. And he had 15 total rebounds in that same meeting against Toronto not too long ago, despite playing only around 18 minutes. Those are absurd per minute numbers. His usual rotation pattern gives him those first 4 minutes to open the game and then roughly 14 more minutes scattered throughout the rest of the night. In a matchup like this, where the Raptors' frontcourt doesn't match his physicality on the boards, it's a spot that offers both stability and upside. If you're someone who likes prop ladders, this is one of those cases where a ladder can legitimately be justified because Robinson has shown a clear trend of exceeding baseline numbers in repeatable ways. And speaking of trends that are worth respecting, the next Knicks player worth highlighting is someone who thrives in tough environments. Someone who plays the type of basketball that translates well when the energy, the urgency, and the physicality ramp up. That someone is Josh Hart. Since being moved into the starting lineup, Hart has been exactly the kind of player coaches trust in these higher pressure matchups. What makes him so valuable is that he doesn't need to dominate scoring or usage to make a real impact. He rebounds, he takes smart shots, he fights through defensive possessions, and he fills gaps in ways that matter over the course of a game. And even though his assists have dipped a little recently, that doesn't diminish the reliability of his points plus rebounds line. That combined category is where he has been delivering consistently. Over his last 7 games, Hart has hit his points plus rebounds line in 6 of those contests. That's the kind of stability bettors look for. And when these two teams played on November 30th, he put up a massive 20 points and 12 rebounds. A 32 combined performance is well above his usual line, and the remarkable thing is that he produced that output even without OG Anunoby available for that one. Now, to be fair, Anunoby was back when the Knicks and Raptors faced again later, and Hart still performed well. But Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't available in that one. The frontcourt rotation was different. The roles shifted. And those are the kinds of contextual details that matter when projecting performance tonight. But even with Towns expected to play now, Hart remains one of the Knicks' most trustworthy contributors in a matchup like this. He doesn't take a ton of shots, but the ones he does take tend to be efficient, and he always positions himself for rebounds. This is exactly the type of game where you want someone like Hart on your side, a game that feels like it could tighten up, get physical, and have possessions where hustle plays swing momentum. Now, shifting over to the Raptors side of things, this matchup becomes much trickier to analyze from a prop perspective. The biggest problem is that the players who typically offer value are now working with elevated lines. Brandon Ingram didn't perform well the last time he faced the Knicks. Scottie Barnes also struggled in that matchup. And Immanuel Quickley barely got over his points line. With their numbers set high again, these aren't automatic overs. But at the same time, the playing time expectations complicate everything. With multiple injuries thinning the Raptors' rotation, their main players may end up logging significantly more minutes than usual, possibly 5, 6, 7, or even 8 more minutes than their season averages. That added volume alone can push a player over a line even if the efficiency isn't there. And that's where this matchup becomes a headache. The Knicks' defense is absolutely legitimate. They can smother you, they can take your primary action away, and they can make players force shots they normally wouldn't take. But the Raptors may simply have so much floor time from their top guys that the numbers eventually fall their way. You can't confidently target unders, but you also can't comfortably chase the overs because the lines are inflated. And for the role players, the issue flips in the opposite direction. Their lines are so low that one little hot streak, maybe 2 quick buckets, can blow an under instantly. That makes projecting any of their props very messy. And that's why, after going through their options thoroughly, there just wasn't a single Raptors line in this matchup worth playing. Everything is either inflated, trap-heavy, or overly dependent on randomness. Now, in the original slip that inspired this breakdown, there was talk about pairing Mitchell Robinson with Anthony Black and bumping each of their lines up by 1 for a 2-leg combination. That kind of build was generating a 6x return with a small boost. Obviously, all promo details and codes are irrelevant and removed here, but the logic behind the combination still stands. It's rooted in trusting the trend on Robinson and the early trend on Black. The reasoning carries over without the promotion attached. As for the side in this game, the lean stays consistent with the broader matchup analysis. The Raptors are missing one of their best players and working with a limited supporting cast, but they are still at home, and they'll play hard. They've shown all season that even when they're undermanned, they don't completely fold. They compete. But the Knicks are getting healthier at the right time, and that makes a meaningful difference. Even though this matchup might get gritty in stretches, the Knicks simply have more stability right now, more structure, more reliability, and more continuity. So the lean is on New York on the road. And now, stepping beyond the specifics of the matchup for a moment, it's always important to acknowledge how much this channel is growing and how much this community means. As Beyond the Box Score continues to evolve, the goal is always the same: bring deeper analysis, sharper insights, and better breakdowns every time. That includes game previews, injury breakdowns, prop-selective videos, under-focused analysis, and conversations about bigger NBA storylines. The vision is to create a space where hardcore bettors and passionate basketball fans feel equally at home, a place where the content delivers value, context, and clarity without relying on noise or promotional distractions. The mission is to speak the language of the NBA, to break down the angles that matter, and to push the content forward every single day. The passion behind this work has always been real, and that will only continue to grow. Every like, every comment, every returning viewer reinforces why this channel keeps expanding its focus, not just on betting content but on the NBA as a whole. It's about delivering content that informs, content that challenges the narrative, content that respects the details that make this sport special. And this community has been incredible in supporting that vision. So as we wrap up this breakdown, thank you for being part of Beyond the Box Score and for helping the channel rise. If you found value in this analysis, make sure you stay locked in. More deep dives, more sharp reads, more NBA conversations, and more betting intelligence are always on the way. This is Beyond the Box Score, where the numbers meet the narrative, and every matchup becomes a story worth breaking down.